Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Benchwarmers Sports Talk podcast. For the final time, I want to thank Billy and Kyle for coming on last week, but we're back to our usual lineup. As always, I'm Labi. I'm joined once again by Jacob. Jacob, how are you doing today?
I'm good, man. Sorry I was absent last week. Thank you to Kyle and Billy for coming in and putting their opinions. It was a great show to listen to, but I'm back and we're ready to go.
Yeah, and you're back in for the perfect timing here because, boy, oh boy, do we have an episode for you today. Um, Continuing the Leafs talk trend, we'll get into that a little bit later in the episode as we will talk about the series so far and preview the upcoming Game 7 between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Montreal Canadiens. But before then, I didn't really talk too much about the Penguins Islanders series last week. And so to start today, let's sit down and let's talk about Tristan Jarry.
Let's
Um,
talk about Jarry.
yeah, once again, Jacob, welcome back to the podcast. But I'm probably just going to go on a bit of a solo rant here for the next 10 minutes. But
Labby, let me just tell you something. You go on your rant because I got a Leaf one coming for you later.
yeah, so the Pittsburgh Penguins are eliminated in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. They lose in 6 games to the New York Islanders. And it's their third straight year being eliminated in the first potential round that they could get eliminated in. Obviously, first round 2019, qualifying round last year, first round again this year. But it's not all doom and gloom because unlike 2019, the Islanders sweep, unlike 2020 against the Montreal Canadiens, when those Penguins teams got eliminated, the mood amongst myself and other Penguins fans was very much there's something off with this team. They're not playing well. They're missing something. They were the worst team. They deserved to lose. They played like shit, etc. This season, it's even more frustrating because what I saw was the Penguins outplay the Islanders in 5 of the 6 games, but they lost the series. And I know that people like to pick scapegoats. I know that people like to attribute blame. And a lot of the time in a playoff series, it's such a close series, or there's the blame can get thrown on multiple different people. There's not one clear reason why a team loses a series normally, especially in the NHL playoffs where, a lot of the time it's very even. Just to bring up an example, like you look at Nashville and Carolina, the last 4 games of that series went to overtime. It was a very tightly contested series. When if you're Nashville, you're proud of the way you played. You really gave Carolina a challenge where I think a lot of other people didn't give you a chance. And when you look at, what do we blame for the reason we lose the series, when the margins are so close like that, there's not one thing that you can pinpoint. However, with the Pittsburgh Penguins, this is a very different story because there is one reason why we lost this series. And I don't want to be the person who just, attacks an individual. I don't want to be the person who, becomes aggressive towards someone. I don't want to be the person who, especially who hates on goaltending, especially in Pittsburgh, because I tried to defend Matt Murray, and I was probably in the minority of people who still had belief in Matt Murray and who wasn't constantly attacking Matt Murray. But when I look at what happened over those 6 games, the only reason the Penguins are eliminated is Tristan Jarry. And I don't want to be that guy who attacks one person, but Tristan Jarry is the reason why the Pittsburgh Penguins lost this series. Period. Full stop. And, Penguins fans and Penguins media are going to spend the next 4 months talking about, should Malkin be traded? Should Gensel be traded? Is Letang washed up? Is our team tough enough? Is our team big enough? Especially now that Brian Burke's a part of our organization. Do we need to get tougher? Do we need to get bigger guys? Is Mike Sullivan the right option at coach? And stop with the spiraling. Stop with the spiraling. This was a Stanley Cup capable team that got the worst goaltending in the last 7 years in the NHL playoffs. And that's not me just making that according to save goals expected versus against goals allowed. This is statistically the worst playoff series in the NHL since 2014. I'm not like that's just the statistic. All we needed was an average performance from Tristan Jarry, and we would have won this series. Game 1, he gives up 4 soft goals. 4 easily could have been saved. 4 routine glove saves all end up in the back of the net. 4. And they lose in overtime. You know what that means? That means if he makes one of those four that he should have made, we still win. Even if you spot him 2 mistakes, even if you spot him 3 mistakes, we still win the hockey game. He made 4 mistakes and they lose in overtime. And so people were asking me, how do you feel? Oh, that wasn't a great game from Jarry. What's going on? And I said, no, Jarry cost us game 1, but look at how the team played in front of him. We almost won that hockey game despite our goalie not knowing how to make a fucking save. I'm not worried. We're going to be all right. What happens? Game 2 comes around. Jarry plays fantastic. Makes the saves that he needs to. Makes saves that were even tougher for him to make. Penguins rally, win Game 2. Game 3 gets really chippy. Referees, I don't know what you're doing throwing the entire first line into the penalty box after a scrap after the whistle, but I'm not a referee, so, whatever. It got a little bit too chippy for my liking. It got a little bit too stressful with having, my entire first line in the penalty box. But what happens? The Penguins are able to stabilize. They overcome a couple of power play goals that they give up. Brendan Tanev scores a late winner. All of a sudden, the Penguins are up 2-1 in the series. Starting to get a little bit more calm. And after that Game 3, I was like, this is what I expected from the Penguins. They've been the better team in every single one of the games. They were definitely by far the better team in Game 1 and Game 2. Game 3 was a lot more evenly matched, but they were able to come away with the win. We're up 2-1 in a series that we should be up 3-0 in. But you know what? As long as we keep playing the way we're playing, we'll be fine. What happens? Game 4 happens. And Game 4, they didn't play well. I'll be the first person to... Game 4, the New York Islanders were the better team. The New York Islanders deserved to win, and the New York Islanders won. But you know what? Sure, 4 games in, you were outplayed in 1 game. The series is tied 2-2. You're going back home for Game 5. You still have home ice advantage in what's essentially now a best-of-3 series. Let's go out. Let's play. Game 5 comes around. Penguins playing fantastic hockey. And I mean fantastic hockey. It's a tie hockey game going into the second period. In the second period, the Pittsburgh Penguins outshoot the New York Islanders 20-4. 20-4. They absolutely dominate the play. I don't think the Penguins spend more than 15 seconds at a time in their own end. And we're cycling in the offensive zone, creating chance after chance after chance. Ilya Sorokin responds every single time. Every single time. What happens? One of those 4 shots goes in. What are you going to do? That's hockey sometimes. So it's a 2-2 hockey game. Penguins absolutely dominating. Still feeling confident. We go into overtime. Penguins consistently creating chance after chance after chance. For whatever reason they can't bury. Sorokin makes a phenomenal save. 2 minutes later, there's a deflection. Sorokin doesn't even react to the deflection, but the puck deflects and hits his pad. If that puck's 2 inches to the left, it goes right between his legs. It's a goal. That's puck luck. Sometimes you have it, sometimes you don't have it. Unfortunately, the Penguins didn't have the puck luck that time. If that puck is 2 inches to the right, like I said, it's not a storyline because the Penguins win a game that they're supposed to win. But that's hockey. I'm not going to sit here and complain about a bounce not going our way because bounces have gone our way in the past. Bounces will go our way in the future. That's just hockey. What's not hockey is about a minute into double overtime, puck comes down towards Tristan Jarry in front of his net. On the left side, he has his outlet defenseman. I believe it was Brian Dumoulin, but I might be wrong about that. But he has a defenseman. Actually, no, I think it was Mike Matheson. Now that I'm thinking about it again. But anyways, he has a defenseman to his left that he can pass to. if he looks to his right, which he doesn't look to his right at all, which is, once again, there's a lot of issues with this one individual play, but one of them is not checking to look at all your options. But he has one defenseman to his left. He has Evgeny Malkin on the right hash as a secondary option. Hell, he could even put the puck behind his own net and force his defenseman to loop back and pick it up if he really doesn't feel that comfortable. But what does he do instead? He just decides to blindly fire the puck right up the middle of the ice. I don't know why he does that, but that's the decision that he makes. What happens? It goes right onto the stick of a New York Islanders player. Okay, what's he going to do to recover? He tries to scramble back into his net, tries to poke check the puck, even though the Islanders player is 10 feet away from him. Don't know why you're trying to poke check when the puck is nowhere near your stick. He tries to go for the poke check. That throws his glove hand way off. Goal goes glove side, because of course it fucking does. And now the Penguins are down 3-2 in the series. Absolutely dominates play, absolutely carries the play. Unfortunately, Tristan Jarry decides that he doesn't want to play any more hockey. He wants the game to end. Makes a just absolutely moronic mistake. Costs us another game. There's game 5. Game 6 rolls around. And look, I'm not going to just blame Tristan Jarry. I would have loved to have seen a little bit more intensity from the Penguins in game 6, considering they were facing elimination. I would have liked them to have come out firing a little bit more. But in game 6, they were still the better team. Game 6, they were still the better team. And, you know, I don't know what it's like to be an NHL player. But I can imagine having, even just playing hockey at a lower level, when your goalie's having a bad game, bad series, that affects you. You know, you start to feel like every chance you have to score on, because you feel like whenever the Islanders get a shot, it's ending up in the back of your net. And game 6, I'm watching the game live. When the Islanders score their 4th goal to go up 4-3, I say to myself, that's the series. And I ended up being right. The 5th goal, right through his 5-hole. Like, you have to have that. Like, there's just so many soft goals in game 6 as well. Penguins were the better team, but they just couldn't, sit on a lead. And a lot of that has to do with the performance of Tristan Jarry. He just didn't make the saves. And the reality is if we get league average goaltending, not good goaltending. And, I'm sure you'll talk about how Carey Price and Jack Campbell are playing phenomenally for the Leafs and the Habs, which was true. UC Saros stole games for Nashville. Marc-Andre Fleury was playing great for Vegas at times. Cam Talbot was phenomenal for Minnesota. Connor Hellebuck was phenomenal for the Winnipeg Jets. I wasn't looking for that performance. I was just looking for average goaltending. Hell, even below average goaltending would have been enough. The only thing that would have lost us this series was if our goalie had a historically bad playoff series. What did he do? He had a historically bad playoff series. And the toughest thing about this is it's not like previous years where you look at this team and you can see where there were weaknesses. Historically, our defensive core has been really poor. I had zero faith in Cody Ceci and Mike Matheson coming into this series. They were into this season, my bad. They were phenomenal this year. Mike Matheson, I still hate his contract, but, he played well this year, so I don't have any, criticism of him. Hell, Cody, I want the Penguins to re-sign Cody Ceci. I don't understand why. I don't understand how that's possible. That if you had told me a year ago when we signed Cody Ceci that I'd want them to re-sign him, I'd call you crazy. But here I am. He played phenomenally. I want them to re-sign Cody Ceci. John Marino took another step. Chris Letang is still Chris Letang. I don't know why people are trying to say he's washed up. People are going to point to a pinch he made in game 5 that led to the first goal, but that's the way the Penguins play the system. If you want to break down that goal, what happens is Chris Letang tries to pinch because that's what he's instructed to do. The puck gets past him. The issue is then Brian Dumoulin, the covering defenseman behind him, also tries to pinch. which is the stupidest thing to do. You don't pinch both defensemen. Dumoulin has to be back there to cover, and he has to skate backwards. Instead, he tries to pinch as well. He's beaten. Then it's Jake Gensel one-on-one with the forward. Jake Gensel doesn't know how to play defense. He does a terrible job. All you have to do is keep your stick in front of the guy. He goes for the body check. Jake Gensel's a small guy. He's not going to push anyone off the puck. And then, also, it's a very savable shot. And Tristan Jarry's just not making a save. So people want to blame Chris Letang. Chris Letang was great in this series. Chris Letang was great in this season. Our issue isn't defense. You look at our offensive lines. This is the deepest Penguins team I have seen in 10 years. We're deeper than we are when we won our back-to-back cups. And I'll talk about this in a little bit too, but I look at our roster going into the Seattle expansion draft, and we're fucked. We're going to lose a phenomenal player. Like, if I look at this team, like, the Kasperi Kapanen edition, phenomenal. Jeff Carter was scoring goals for fun. When Jared McCann is on your third line, you know you have a deep playoff team, like hockey team. Our fourth line, Aston Reese, Bluger, and Tanev, is the best fourth line in hockey. I don't care what anyone says. And they were phenomenal this series. I can't point to anybody. Sure, Crosby only had 2 points. Should he have produced more? Yeah, he probably should have produced more. People talking about Adam Pelech and Ryan Pulock shutting him down? No, they fucking didn't. Sidney Crosby's line had like 65% of the expected goals when he was on the ice, and they created more high-scoring chances than any other line in the playoffs. That includes every other series. Sidney Crosby's line created the most chances out of any line across any series in any playoff game so far. They just couldn't score on Ilya Sorokin. Should I be critical that guys like Jake Gensel and Sidney Crosby couldn't score on their million chances that they created? Yeah, I'm going to be critical of their finishing ability. But anyone who suggests that they got locked down, they got shut down by the Islanders' top defense pair, didn't watch the hockey game. The reality is Ilya Sorokin was phenomenal, and Tristan Jarry couldn't save a fucking beach ball. And now I sit here looking at what could have been, because ultimately there's another year of the Crosby, Malkin, Letang era down the drain. And if I look at who to blame, it's very simple. I don't blame management for not assembling the team, for not taking chances. The reality is our goalie cost us the series. I don't know how much of that series you watched, Jacob, but what are your thoughts on the Penguins?
Well, I actually watched every single game of that series because it's a fun rivalry they got going on Long Island and Pittsburgh. But you're right, you hit it on the nail, and goaltending is so important. And Sorokin, although a lot of people had their doubts and skepticism because he's only been in the league a year, and he's still a rookie, and playoff hockey is a completely different breed of game. But yeah, at the end of the day, Sorokin outplayed Jarry, and Jarry just flopped. I don't know if it was the pressure of playing in the playoffs. I don't know if it was he's still young, but you cannot give him a pass on this. He did not play well this series. Sure, he had good games, but this series overall, you know who he reminded me of? He reminded me a lot of Hutchinson making bad decisions and not making the easy saves. And I'm sorry to say, but Hutchinson, I would have honestly taken in that spot more than Jarry. And that's coming from a fan who hates Michael Hutchinson as a player. There's a lot of questions surrounding goaltending now. Like, is Jarry going to do it again? Like, are you guys going to roll Jarry again next year? That's my biggest question to you, Labi.
Yeah, I mean, it's bad when your backup goalie is Maxime Lagacé. He's played one NHL game this year. It was the last game of the season against Buffalo. And you have Penguins fans being like, well, put him in because he couldn't possibly do worse. Look, I don't want to be too harsh on Tristan Jarry, like, in terms of going forward. The reality is our backup goalie, Casey DeSmith, was injured. I think that if DeSmith is healthy, Jarry is replaced in Game 5. Definitely doesn't start Game 6 if DeSmith is healthy. And once again, does that change anything? Who knows? But the unfortunate reality is Sullivan made the decision that because Lagacé was our backup, that it was going to be Jarry he was going to stick with Jarry the entire playoffs. I disagree with that. I would have liked to have seen Lagacé honestly start Game 6. But yeah, I mean, you look at Ilya Sorokin, like you said, he's technically a rookie. I don't consider, like, he is a rookie, but I mean, the guy won a championship in the KHL, so he has playoff experience. He's literally won a championship, like Gagarin Cup, which is the KHL Stanley Cup. So I knew he wasn't going to be, you know, I knew he wasn't going to be afraid of the spotlight of the playoffs. Oh, Tristan Jarry, man. I mean, if you look at it from like a basic statistics perspective, I mean, 867 save percentage in Game 3, 846 in Game 4, 893 in Game 5, 762 in Game 6.
Ooh, that
And then
762 is awful.
and then people are going to say, "Oh, well, I mean, save percentage isn't like the best category, like isn't the best statistic." You're right, it's not. Let's look at goals saved above expected. Tristan Jarry was like negative 7.2, I think, in the series, which means he let in 7 more goals than would have been expected, which means if an average goalie was in net for the Penguins, they would have let in 7 fewer goals. Which is why when I say the Penguins would have won this series with bad goaltending, I mean that. Because they didn't need 7 goals back to win the series. They lost 2 games in overtime. 1 game, they didn't play well. They lost 2 games in overtime. They lost another game by 2 goals. Even if you give the Islanders Game 6, where they win 5-3, I believe that was the score. If you take 2 goals back of the 7, that's the 2 overtime games that the Penguins should have won in Game 1 and Game 5. If you give the Penguins those 2 games, all of a sudden the series switches and it's 4-2 Pittsburgh. So if we got average goaltending, Penguins win this series in 5. If we get bad goaltending, the Penguins win this series in 6 or 7. But we got Tristan Jarry, we lose in 6. In terms of your question about what to do with Tristan Jarry moving forward, shout out to Jay Fresh Hockey. He does analytics on a player's projected WAR, which is wins above replacement, or like your performance above the expected player. So Tristan Jarry is 27%, which is 27th percentile, which means he's better than 27% of goalies in the NHL based on those statistics. But then it gets broken down into other categories. The thing that really stands out to me is that he's basically pretty much average across a whole lot. 49% at even strength, that's basically dead even. 46% medium shots, 53% low danger shots, 49% consistency, 49% rebound control. So like he's an average goalie. The thing that I see is he's 6th percentile with great starts. So essentially with Tristan Jarry, and it's what I saw during the regular season, Tristan Jarry had a good regular season. What I mean by that is Tristan Jarry didn't win us games single-handedly, but he made sure that we won games where we were the better team. And now you have to ask yourself a question of what type of goalie does your team need? And with a team like the Penguins, where they're so like top heavy, we're so loaded offensively, we're so loaded on our roster that we don't have cap space lying around to throw to a goalie. Realistically, you just like the problem with Tristan Jarry is with the 6th percentile of great starts is he's not going to win you games. So the issue is if he starts to cost you games, that's a huge problem. Realistically, my plan for the Penguins going forward, let me bring this up because we have the expansion draft for Seattle and we have to take a look at sort of what the contract status is of these players and everything going forward. So realistically, if I look at who's a free agent coming up for the Penguins that we need to worry about, There really isn't too many people. Cody Cece's a free agent. Like I said, I actually do want to re-sign him. He made 1.25. We signed him to a 1 year, 1.25 million. Um, I don't know if he's going to get a bigger offer in free agency. If he does, he'll probably take it. We really don't have any money to offer him more than that. Uh, I think we try to bring Cody Cece back at 1 year, 1.25 again. The big issue is offensively, Zach Aston Reese and Teddy Bluger both have expiring contracts. They're making $1,750,000. Zach Aston Reese and Teddy Bluger are phenomenal players. They deserve to be paid more. Talking about Jay Fresh, he also has his Teddy Bluger profile. And Teddy Bluger is about what you'd expect. He's 4% percentile even strength offense, which basically means that he's 96% of forwards are better than him at generating offense at even strength, which makes sense. He's not there to score goals. He's in the 99th percentile penalty kill, which means he's in the top 1% of penalty killers in the NHL, and his even strength defense is 89th percentile, which means he's in the top 10% of defensive players in the NHL. We know what he's here to do. He's not here to score goals. He's here to be a shutdown fourth line defensive pairing. And if you pair him with Zach Aston Reese, who I don't have his statistics here, but I know he's very similar to Teddy Bluger. These are guys who deserve to be paid a whole lot more. The question is, we don't have the cap space to do that. The other thing is, with this expansion draft, we can only protect 7 forwards. Malkin and Crosby have to be protected because of their no-move clause. Even if they didn't have to be protected, we're obviously protecting them. Jake Gensel, obvious protection. He's number 3. Which leads me to have 4 more spots available. Do you protect Jason Zucker? Do you protect Brian Rust? Do you protect Brendan Tanev? Do you protect Kasperi Kapanen? Do you protect Jared McCann? Do you protect Zach Aston Reese? Do you protect Teddy Bluger? You see where I'm going with this. After Crosby, Malkin, and Gensel, we only have 4 spots for arguably 7 players. So you ask me, what do I do going forward? Here's what I do going forward. I'm protecting Brendan Tanev, Kasperi Kapanen, Zach Aston Reese, and Teddy Bluger. Unfortunately, that leaves Jared McCann unprotected. That's really tough. I'd rather have Tanev, Kapanen, Aston Reese, and Bluger than McCann. That's just my personal opinion. I also leave Jason Zucker unprotected. He's making $5.5 million a year. He hasn't really fit in as well as I thought he would. If Seattle wants to take on his cap hit of $5.5 million, by all means, take him off our hands. He's a damn good player. It would suck to get rid of him, but unfortunately, we can only protect so many people. The big question mark that a lot of Penguins fans are probably going to come at me for is that means I'm leaving Brian Rust unprotected. Here's why. He's 29 years old. He's only making $3.5 million a year. His contract expires at the end of next season. Brian Rust will be 30 next year when his contract expires, making $3.5 million a year. Based on the way he's played, based on his role with the Penguins, based on the market right now, how much do you think Brian Rust will be asking for, Jacob?
Oh, probably upwards of what his contract is right now.
I think that. Don't you think that a team would pay him $5.56 million a year in free agency, 30 goal scorer, only 30 years old?
Yeah, for sure. He may ask for more, to be honest with you, the way he plays.
We don't have that kind of money.
No.
We're losing Brian Rust most likely at the end of next season, or at least that's where I would make the tough cut. So what happens? Brian Rust probably has some trade value.
Maybe you could trade someone to I don't know, maybe send them to the minors for the expansion draft and bring them back up.
Exactly. Why would I leave Brian Rust exposed in the expansion draft? I think we have to trade Brian Rust this season. This offseason, I mean. Because that will lead. I think Seattle takes Jared McCann in the expansion draft. I think we trade Brian Rust. And I think that that's really the only thing you're going to do. Defensively, you protect Letang, you protect Dumoulin. Outside of that, I really don't know what third defenseman to protect. Mike Matheson, if you want to take his contract, take his contract. Marcus Pettersson, same thing. You want to take his contract, take his contract. I'm not protecting those guys because I know Seattle's not going to pick them, so there's no need in having to protect them. I think if we re-sign Cody Ceci, we honestly protect him, which, once again, sounds crazy. But you asked me about the goaltending. I think that Tristan Jarry, and all Penguins fans all over the place, trade Jarry, trade Jarry, trade Jarry. Why? You saw what we got for Matt Murray last year. We got 2 third-round picks for Matt Murray. Okay. If we trade Tristan Jarry for 2 third-round picks, I don't even think we'll be able to get that. What's Tristan Jarry's trade value, honestly?
I would say maybe a 4th or 5th at this point.
What team is going to look at what he just did and say, yeah, I want to trade for that guy?
Yeah.
We're not trading Tristan Jarry. He's making $3.5 million a year for the next couple of years. That's cheap, actually, considering how much goalies are being paid nowadays. Looking at you, Bobrovsky. Casey DeSmith, solid backup, but realistically, I mean, Tristan Jarry should be in a tandem with someone that you have to bring in next year. And the biggest problem I have with the Penguins is the fact that we didn't have Casey DeSmith available, and that cost us because when we needed to turn to a second goalie, we didn't have a second goalie. So let's take a look at what goalies are available in free agency next year, because there are some pretty solid options.
I got one for you.
Let's hear it.
Mr. Frederick Anderson.
Nope. Can't afford him. First of all, can't afford him.
I know. I don't think you'd want him either, to be honest.
Second of all, probably don't want him. If I'm looking at the Penguins and I look at our cap space, once again, not to just only talk about the Penguins in this episode, but I mean, this is the last time I'm going to be able to talk about them until probably,
next year.
in reality until next year. If I take a look at the Penguins for next season. No, I'm in the wrong spot. I'm trying to pick it. Here you go. Armchair GM on Cap Friendly. Here we go. Create a team, Pittsburgh Penguins. If I look at our cap space for next year's season, we don't have a lot of money. At all. So if I take a look at what we have to do, we're already negative 1.1 million in cap space with the team that we currently have. So if I get Brian Rust out of there, right? I remove Brian Rust. That's $3.5 million. I remove Jared McCann because I think that he is going to get lost in the expansion draft. That's another $3 million. So that means we essentially have $5 million to work with this team.
Not a lot.
Not a lot at all. Not a
Good
lot
luck
at
finding
all.
Good luck finding a goalie under $5 million.
Let's assume that $1.1 million goes towards Cody Ceci getting re-signed. Okay, so now we're down to $3.9 million. How much of a pay raise are Zach Aston Reese and Teddy Bluger going to get? Honestly, if we can re-sign Zach Aston Reese and Teddy Bluger for $3.9 million combined long-term, I will be ecstatic. If we can sign those guys to like a 4-year, $2 million a year contract, that would be absolute highway robbery. I don't think, unless they're willing to take that Pittsburgh Penguins hometown discount, that would ever happen. But let's even assume they do that. That leaves us with $0 basically. $0 for the same team that we have. So then you go to our goalies. Let's say you get rid of Casey DeSmith. That frees up $1.25 million for your goalies. So essentially what I'm saying is, if all these Penguins fans calling for a new goalie, with what money? We have no money. So there's really only there's really only two ways that I can see us going with our goaltending. There's the extremely risky way, and then there's the safe way. The safe way is we throw a veteran goalie to a contract, because when Craig Anderson filled in for the Washington Capitals this year in the playoffs, he didn't play badly. He wasn't the reason Washington lost. Washington lost because they were outplayed by Boston. But Craig Anderson played well.
Yeah, I'll agree. Craig Anderson kind of got his 2017 form back.
Right. So the thing is if Tristan Jarry struggles, I want to have that type of player, to fill in for him. So when I look at
so I have
players,
I have a question for you.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So we talk about how Craig Anderson. Would you consider going after a veteran goaltender who may be out of their prime just for a year?
That's reading my mind. That's the safe option. The safe option is I'm looking at the goalies that are upcoming in free agency. I'm looking at, although we honestly can't even afford. Like, I'm looking at Peter Mrazek. We can't afford his contract. We can't.
Nope.
We can't. I'm looking at Yaroslav Halak.
He might be an option.
Like, realistically, like Brian Elliott, and like the reality is like, if we want a veteran guy, it would have to be like a Craig Anderson $700K type of contract. Then there's the risky option. And the risky option is we realize that we're most likely going to lose a really talented player like a Brian Rust. So we figure, hey, let's try to make a trade. We realize that, hey, we've traded how many first round picks? Fuck it, let's keep going all in. We have 3 prospects in our pool? Screw it, let's only have one, right?
Yeah.
We trade for John Gibson.
Oh my goodness, you're gonna say trading for John Gibson?
I think that's the risky option. If Ron Hextall, as a former goalie, is convinced that we need a significant improvement in net, then we go trade for John Gibson.
Do you really believe Anaheim is going to give up their goalie?
I don't know.
Like,
Brian Rust, a first-round pick, and Samuel Poulin, who's in the minors. Maybe we also throw in, once again, I don't know, Tristan Jarry, if that's even worth anything, but we would have to free up $6.4 million to get his cap hit onto the team. And so that's the thing. The reality is all these Penguins fans are talking about what they would do to fix this team. The reality is I don't think there's a fix with this team. I think the reality is that anything you try to do to improve this team, you can't do, because we're realistically perfectly aligned in the cap. Like, the reality is that next year's team is going to be weaker because we're going to have to lose a player to Seattle. And if we can re-sign all the players currently on our team and still be under the salary cap next year, that will be impressive. So what does that mean? That means that whether we like it or not, we're dependent on Tristan Jarry and Casey DeSmith next year. I really think we are. And the reality has to be that come this time next year, I really hope that I don't have to sit here and talk about what Casey DeSmith, what Tristan Jarry has been doing. Because the reality is, in 6 games, the Pittsburgh Penguins had 58.92% of the chances in the game, but only 40% of the goals.
Those are not good numbers.
And if you look at the chances created, there are only 2 teams that have created more chances in the playoffs, and that was Vegas in an extra game in 7 games, and Carolina.
Right.
The issue wasn't the Penguins didn't play well. The issue is our goalie cost us the series. And now when we look at the cap situation that the Penguins are in, the reality is if we truly want to have a different goaltender starting for us next October, we would have to make a huge dent into the team because of our cap situation. And I'm really hoping that Hextall and Burke don't do that. And I know we're 40 minutes in and I'm still talking about the Penguins, so I'm going to wrap it up by basically saying what I tweeted out as sort of my closing thoughts, which is, man, I really hope they don't blow up this team. The best NHL team of all time wouldn't overcome a goaltending collapse like that. This was the best Penguins team since the back-to-back Cups, and they show that in this series. I hope we don't see any big changes. If Casey DeSmith is healthy, he replaces Jarry in this season, and the Pens might be still alive or even through the second round. This team is elite, and I'm worried that if Hextall and Burke make huge changes, we'll take a step back instead of forward. Penguins fans need to remember that we used both goalies in our 2016 and 2017 Cup runs. Having multiple goalies you can rely on is a genuine winning strategy, and the Penguins need to have that for next season. The question is, can that be done without blowing this team up? And that's where I stand on the Pittsburgh Penguins.
That's a question I don't even know the answer to. We know that Burke can make some very questionable decisions, but he does make good decisions too. Like Riley turned out to be one of the best defensemen the Leafs have ever had in history. So
I have faith in Ron Hextall, though, as a former goalie. He's a guy who I think if we're going to get a new goalie, he will find his target of who he wants to get, and he will go out and get him. And the only thing that I can judge this current regime on is the one move that they made, which was the Jeff Carter trade, and that was phenomenal. So there's no reason for me not to trust the team right now. It's just really scary because they could overreact to this because you look at it as a Stanley Cup contending team getting bounced in the first round, but that's not what happened. What happened is our goalie shit the bed. And so I hope we don't act like we got eliminated in the first round, and I hope we just act like, this team was damn good. And I think that's reflected because they already announced that Sullivan will be back next year, which is good. The only coach I'd take over Sullivan is Gerard Gallant. I think it's actually like a fucking travesty that no team has picked him up.
Oh, you don't want the torch show, eh?
Oh, I don't want the torch show at all.
I think Gallant's gonna go to Seattle probably.
That's the more I look at who Seattle could have from a management, coaching, and player perspective, I honestly think they could pull a Vegas next year. But we'll talk about that when the expansion draft happens, which is only like a couple of weeks away.
Yeah, it's not very far away.
Let's talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs. So the Toronto Maple Leafs last time we talked, or last podcast episode last week, we're feeling pretty good. They were up 3-1, and now we're facing another Game 7. After back-to-back overtime losses, they overcame multi-goal deficits to push the game to overtime. They were down 3-0 in Game 5, come back, lose in overtime. Down 2-0 in Game 6, come back, lose in overtime. And Leafs fans now have to suffer through another Game 7. I won't bring up how many Game 7s you guys have played and lost in recent memory. Jacob, how are you feeling? How is Leafs Nation feeling?
This fucking team. Like this team is just... I really don't know where to go with them, man. Like, we were feeling good. Yeah, up 3-1. Wait till the memes of 3-1 start coming in if we lose. I've said this to everyone at my school, and I'm going to say it to the podcast. If the Toronto Maple Leafs blow this 3-1 series lead, I'm done with them. I will no longer support them how I support them now. Sure, I'll still watch their games, but I will not put the effort or time into them or go out of my way to watch them. I will stick to being an Avalanche fan because they at least know what not choking is. This team, I legitimately do not know what to say about them. Jack Campbell playing out of his goddamn mind. Like the Leafs, let's talk about that last game. like you said, the second game in a row coming down in dramatic fashion, scoring late. TJ Brody of all his second goal of the league, only his second. Um, Scoring with like 3 minutes to go, and for the second day in a row, I'm like, oh shit, here we go again. We got the hope, and then and complete different to what happened in game number 5. They completely dominated the overtime in this one, and I'm like, oh my god, maybe this is it. Like chance after chance after chance, and then all it took was one chance for the Montreal Canadiens, and that was it. All that time and effort put into that game just for another heartbreak. And don't get me wrong, it was great to see fans in the stadium. It was actually kind of refreshing for a Canadian game. Granted, it was obviously more Montreal fans in Toronto, but it was refreshing to see fans in the stands. Um, but oh my god, man, I literally cannot. I literally don't know what to do with this team. Like, do we blow it up after this season? Does one of the big four get? I don't think Nylander should get traded. Marner has made some very poor decisions in this series, in my opinion. Can't trade Matthews. He's your number one. Um, yeah, I think every season Marner has made in a clinching game has made a crucial penalty error. Like you said, I don't know what the hell he was thinking, dumping the puck all the way there. He had so much time. He had so much time, and he fucking took that stupid ass penalty. So he was crying in the penalty box. You lost the game and you should have known better, making how fucking much money you are. Sorry, I know I get a little heated when this is, but something's got to change. I don't know what it is, but something has to change. It's not goaltending. We already know Jack Campbell is elite right now, and like you said, goaltending has been the main story of the season. And I couldn't agree with you more. He's been absolutely unreal. Carey Price obviously has been out of his mind too. Decided to channel his inner 2014 Carey all of a sudden. Don't know why he decided to do that all like this season, but credit to him. Like if Montreal wins, it's because of him, and as they should. You know, they should credit where credit is due. Um, our defense is fine. Sandin kind of screwed us that first game, or that not that first game, that fourth game, but Dermott played well, and I was pretty happy with how everyone played, but they can't handle the pressure. Like, look at the difference between the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I'm going to go back to a few years when the Pens went back to back, they were, no one really expected them to go back to back. They were kind of the underdog in a few of those games, but they can handle the pressure of a game 6, of a game 7, of a clinching game. The Leafs are 0-7 in elimination games. 0-7. And I don't know what else Jack Campbell's got to do to save their asses again, but he's going to have to come out clutch. And if they lose the series, I wouldn't be surprised. If they won, I'd be happy. I would. But there's so many question marks, so many asterisks, so many what ifs, what happens, what's going to happen, that I don't know what I just don't know about this team. Like there's nothing else I can say. I'm disappointed, but I'm not shocked, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, first to your point about goalies, if you look at goals saved above expected, which is like what I was talking about with Jarry being minus 7.2, there have been 21 goalies so far that have played in the playoffs. Carey Price is ranked third. Jack Campbell's ranked fourth. For anyone counting, Tristan Jarry is ranked 21 of 21. Big shock there. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Both goalies are playing phenomenally well in the series. Jack Campbell showed that he can be a starting goalie, a playoff caliber goalie that you can rely on. Just even looking at Game 6, some of those saves he made to keep it at 2-0 really gave the Leafs a chance in the game, because it easily could have been 3-0 and then they would have been dead and buried. And he gave the Leafs an opportunity to come back. And we were talking before we started recording. Both Leafs goals in Game 6, Carey Price had nothing, like couldn't have done anything about it because they both deflected off his own defenseman.
Yeah,
And
and Jack Campbell couldn't do much about the goals either.
yeah, and the OT winner, very similar, deflects off the Leafs defenseman. So you can't blame the goalies on any of those goals. Like you said, Marner has honestly been invisible. Uh, I'm not a Leafs fan, but I've watched the games. I think that I think your best players this series have been Nylander, Spezza, and Campbell, which
And
is
and 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 how are you gonna? How are Leaf fans gonna like? How do Leaf fans feel that Nylander, the guy everyone thought was a bust, and
yeah. I love
Spezza,
how you guys were shitting on Nylander. Like, I mean, like to be fair, he has not been playing up to his contract a lot of the time, but he's delivered in this series. And I mean, Matthews has what, one goal in this series?
1 goal, 3 points.
I mean, once again, it goes beyond that, but it doesn't look like he's really created a lot of chances. I understand your frustration as the Leafs, like so many of my friends are Leafs fans, and um, when you guys are up 3-1, I didn't see anybody celebrating, and then Game 5, you guys are up 3-1. Game 5, Montreal scores to go up 1-0, and all of a sudden all my friends are messaging, "Oh, here we go again. Oh, great." I'm like, "You're up 3-1 in the series and it's only 1-0."
Yeah,
And
but
and they're
you're not a Leaf fan. You
and,
know that 3-1 isn't safe.
yeah, and I'm starting to realize that now that we're looking down the barrel of a Game 7 where it's like I understand why Leafs fans won't celebrate until it's like 100, like until the buzzer goes and they've won the series. I can see why they wouldn't be celebrating, and I can see why even being down 1-0 in Game 5 when you're up 3-1 in the series feels like, oh boy, here we go again, because 4 days later and here we go again, you guys are
Game
facing
7.
a Game 7. Um yeah, what are your thoughts for Game 7?
I still believe Toronto will win this series. In both games they've lost recently, they were down, they came back, and they lost in overtime. Um, but I will not be surprised if they lose. And credit to Montreal for um, basically ending an entire franchise and their fan base. They're gonna pull a Tom Wilson on us, but I can't with this team. Like if they lose in Game 7, I will not be able to support them the same way. I will not. I cannot. And it doesn't go to just this year, but it's look at what happened last year and the year before that and the year before that and the year before that. Yeah, like it goes on. The list goes on. And so that's why I've like given up on like basically all faith on this team if they lose this series because they can't get it done.
Yeah, I
So
mean, I think the thing that explains it perfectly is if you watch Steve Dangle's latest video, which is his response to the Game 6 loss, he basically ends it by saying, "What would you change?" And I think what he refers to is you've changed coaches, you've changed general manager, you've changed anything in the front office that needs, like, that could be changed. Your entire coaching staff has been changed. The entire depth of this team has been changed. The only thing that hasn't been changed essentially is the core of your players. And so I think that sums it up perfectly. It's like they've tried to change literally everything, and they're facing a Game 7 again here.
there's
And
only so many things you can change before the fan base will start to change.
yeah, and I think that, we were sitting here talking about how it would be a failure for the Leafs to not get out of the North Division. And we're sitting here once again, first round Game 7. And it's crazy how we're looking at making the second round like this monumentous occasion. And once again, we're not going to even think about Toronto versus Winnipeg because they still need to play Game 7 against Montreal. But, you know, it's crazy how Leafs fans are already talking about, oh, if we lose this game, where, like, realistically, the expectation for Toronto is to win this game and then go on and beat Winnipeg in the next series. And, like, people aren't even confident that they can win this game against Montreal.
My philosophy, my thing stays. If they beat Montreal, I think they'll roll Winnipeg. I don't know why, but I just have a feeling that they'll just get it. It's the hump. It's the first round hump that they need to get over before they can start moving. But I don't know if it's going to be a hump. I don't know. I really don't know with this team anymore.
And now here's another big question. And once again, not to talk about the off season already, because the Leafs are still very much in the playoffs. They still have Game 7 tomorrow, and they could have a second round. But here's one thing to think about for Leafs fans. With the expansion draft, there's a rule where every team has to expose at least 2 forwards who are under contract beyond this season. Which means you have to expose at least 2 forwards who aren't UFAs or RFAs this coming season. And we talk about how the Leafs have cap problems, to put it mildly. Well, the Leafs forward core only have 6 players who meet those exposure requirements, which means of these 6 players, 2 of them have to be left exposed. Austin Matthews, you're not exposing him. John Tavares, you're not exposing him. Mitch, you can't. He has a no-move clause. Mitch Marner, you're not exposing him. William Nylander, you're not exposing him. Alexander Kerfoot. I think Leafs fans like him. They'd want to keep him around.
I love him. The way he plays is gritty. He's good. I think he should stay.
And Pierre Engvall.
No, he can go.
You have to, unfortunately, the way your team is currently constructed, leave 2 of those players exposed.
It would have to be Kerfoot and Engvall.
It would have to be Kerfoot and Engvall. Now, obviously, if you re-sign guys between now and then, you could then leave those players exposed. Some notable UFAs this year are Zach Hyman, who every single Leafs fan I talk to wants him re-signed.
If he goes, this team is in big trouble.
I'd imagine, that's why I'm saying, I'd imagine if you re-sign him, you would protect him anyways. Like, I imagine Zach Hyman is getting protected.
Yep.
Wayne Simmons, Nick Foligno, they're on expiring deals. Do you re-sign them? If you do you expose them?
I think you re-sign them after the free agency, after the expansion draft.
So then my question becomes, if you don't re-sign any of these guys until after the expansion draft, and you still want to protect Zach Hyman, then Alex Kerfoot and Pierre Engvall are being left exposed on this team. So if you're a Leafs fan going into next season, Alex Kerfoot is probably off this team unless Seattle decides to go Justin Hall.
Which I can see them doing because he's a good defenseman. I think he's the most improved player this season, if not Jack Campbell. But man, his game has just changed like 180 from last year, and I'm so proud of him, and I'm so happy that he's on the team. But if he gets taken, I'll be really hurt. Like, that'll be a big loss to Toronto.
And so, anyway, the point I'm trying to make here is, with you guys having so few players locked up long term, and we've talked about this time and time again, Matthews, Tavares, Marner, Nylander, how safe are these guys going into this offseason? Especially with, even if they win this Game 7, how safe are these guys going forward?
Well, the core four are completely safe. There's just no question. Dubas literally sold half his soul for them, and so he's not going to give up. He can't do it. So, man, I don't know. Like, it's super frustrating to see this happen because obviously we can't do anything. It's an expansion draft. There's nothing we can do. But the core four is safe. I just don't know about the rest of the team, and I would love to see Hall come back, assuming that I'm still a fan of this team like that. I would love to see Hall come back and just completely do exactly what he's been doing. But if he goes, I think a lot of Dubas' work on defense might actually be affected big time by this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair point to make. I mean, like I said, going back to the whole point that Steve Dangle made of what do you change, firing Keefe won't accomplish anything really. Like you already had this core under Babcock, you've had this core under Keefe. I think Dubas is pretty safe as your general manager. I don't see him getting fired anytime soon. And I mean, if you look at the depth of this Toronto Maple Leafs team, like that's not the reason you guys are losing. Like Spezza's played phenomenally, like we've already talked about. I was very critical of the Wayne Simmons signing at the start of the season. I'll admit I was wrong about that.
I think Wayne Simmons was one of the biggest pickups that Dubas brought in, 100%.
Your defense is actually a lot better this season.
Well, yeah, I agree with you. I think the defense. I think Dubas did everything in his power. Well, he wanted to trade Brody beforehand. Like he wanted him to come earlier. But Kadri didn't want to go to Calgary, so that was the only reason why they had to wait till the off season.
Yeah, and I mean, you even navigated some goaltending struggles where, Freddie Anderson, who is supposed to be the guy, and a lot of people, like even we've discussed time and time again, what's going to happen to Freddie when he hits free agency? I don't think any Leafs fans care about losing Frederik Anderson this offseason because it looks like Jack Campbell's the guy.
Jack Campbell came in 17-3-2. Literally nothing else needs to be said.
And so, yeah, I think that Monday is going to be a very telling day for the
Monday will be franchise changing, good or bad.
Yeah, and I mean, once again, I'm sure next week we'll be talking a whole lot about the Leafs, whether they're eliminated or through to the second round. With that, I know we're already at an hour, so let's just quickly go through some of the other playoff series. And I guess we have the round 2 matchups in every other division. So Boston versus New York. Your thoughts on either of those teams and what's going forward?
Boston's going to sweep them, in my opinion. Boston is just, look, Pasternak seems to have gotten it back. Marshall, that line is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, completely agree. I mean, Pittsburgh would have won the series easily if they got average goaltending. Tuukka Rask is better than an average goalie.
Tuukka Rask has been playing really well this year, and not a lot of people are talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, the Islanders aren't going to score 4 goals on 15 shots on Tuukka Rask. I also think Boston sweeps this series. Like, the Islanders don't deserve to be here this deep into the play. Like, they don't.
I agree.
Yeah, so I have Boston sweeping that. And then we have Carolina versus Tampa Bay. And I just want to say, like,
shit.
I knew it. Like, Kucherov has 11 points in the playoffs. We don't have to talk about whether he deserves to be playing or not with the whole salary cap thing because we've once again talked about that way too much. I think the consensus between all of us who've been on the podcast is, blame the league. They're the idiots who have such a exploitable loophole. But I mean, I keep telling you, like, Carolina got pushed by Nashville in ways that I don't think people expected. And Tampa Bay kind of like rolled over Florida. Like, I know it was a 6-game series, and I know that Florida did challenge them. So I'm not sitting here acting like it was like a one-sided thing, but I don't think it was as close as people thought it was going to be. I think this Tampa team is just too fucking good.
This, yeah, this.
I'd love to see Carolina challenge, but I still think Tampa Bay's the team.
I actually think Carolina is going to take this series. To be honest with you, I think the coaching and the Nedeljkovic has just been absolutely ridiculous this postseason. I actually think Carolina's going to come out of this one in 7 games.
I mean, I'd love to see that. I'd love to see that happen. I just, for whatever reason, just I don't see it.
Well, yeah, like you said, Tampa is absolutely ridiculously stacked, but I just think Carolina has more heart in it. I think Tampa is like expecting to do this, and I think it's going to be easy like last series, but I think Carolina's got the heart. They got their coach Rod Brindamore, who's an absolute stud, and I think they're just going to come out of this one.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a phenomenal series. And then we also got that Colorado Vegas series that
Like
I
these
think
series
everyone
are like
I
like
think everyone's looking forward to it.
if Montreal loses or wins or something, or even if Toronto wins, like to be honest with you, I don't see anyone watching the Canadian North Division. Like I really don't. I personally, obviously if Montreal wins, I'm not watching this division anymore because I got Colorado and they're going up against Vegas, which should be a fucking great series. Although I don't think it's going to be as hyped up as in like it's going to go to 7 games. I think it's going to be a great series as in like it's going to be fun to watch. I think Colorado's going to win in 6.
I'm still sticking with Vegas. I don't know
Okay.
why. I once again I just um the Minnesota Vegas matchup works for whatever reason. Minnesota matches up really well against Vegas, and Vegas was able to win the series. I think Vegas matches up really well against Colorado. Maybe Colorado still finds a way to win the series. They certainly have more than enough talent to be able to do that. But for all the people who are like, oh my God, Colorado look unstoppable. Like, yeah, against St. Louis, like, I know that's probably being a little bit dismissive, but like St. Louis
But
didn't deserve to be anywhere near the playoffs. Like they suck. Um,
but they didn't just beat St. Louis, they steamrolled St. Louis.
yeah, but like in my opinion, I think Vegas would have steamrolled St. Louis as well. So I think that game one between Colorado and Vegas will really see how talented Colorado is. I'll say this: if Colorado comfortably outplays Vegas, then the other teams might as well give up because I think they'll win the Stanley Cup then. I really do think that Vegas will challenge them. I think this is going to be, once again, maybe it doesn't go 7, but I think all the games will be competitive. I still think Vegas can get it done, so I'm leaning them. And then the last thing to talk about today, speaking of disappointing franchises, is since last week where we were talking about, oh, the Oilers should be all right. I mean, like, how many games is McDavid going to go pointless? Yeah, so the Oilers got swept.
So yeah, the Oilers, by the way, they got swept.
Yeah, so what's going on there?
So we'll quickly kind of get over this so we can like wrap it up. But they got outplayed. Literally nothing else about it. They suck. The Oilers are not a good team. And finally people are exposed to how bad they are and how overconfident maybe they wouldn't have been. So yeah, their Oilers suck. They literally don't have a goaltender. And we talk about how goaltending is so important in these series. And Connor Hellebuck is Connor Hellebuck.
Yeah, there's no doubt that Hellbuck played phenomenally. I don't think you can blame Mike Smith though. Like,
No, you're right. No, you're 100% right. It's. I just kind of did it as a goaltender
oh
differential,
no, for sure.
and yeah, you're 100%. You can't blame Mike Smith. Man stood on his head, did everything he could. McDavid and Draisaitl got a single point in that series. That's it.
I swear McDavid had like 3 points in game 3.
No, okay, maybe he did, but my point is, where the hell were they?
Yeah, I think the other thing is, I mean, not to bring it back to the Leafs, but I think the Leafs are a good example because everyone looks at the Leafs of being very top heavy and everyone looks at the Oilers of being very top heavy. I could even bring the Penguins in as like a team being top heavy, but the Penguins got goals from their depth in the playoffs. The Leafs have gotten goals from their depth in the playoffs. The
Yeah,
Oilers didn't have any depth. I think the biggest telling thing is, and once again, like, I'm not a coach, so once again, maybe these guys know better than me, but like, if a hockey game goes to triple overtime and you just bench your third D pairing for all three overtimes, like, there's something wrong with the way your team is constructed, with the way your team is coached, and with the morale within that locker room. Ethan Bear, like, racist comments after the fact aside, because that's disgusting. And I think that goes without saying, and we don't even have to mention that. But Ethan Bear's a good defenseman. He's a good player.
Yeah, it was super sad to see what happened after that series. Like, it was super super sad, and we talk about how everyone's making the right strides in the right direction when it comes to accepting all nationality, and then this happens. Like, it's just disappointing and awful.
I mean, and I'm going beyond that, because, like, even if you're a terrible hockey player and even if you make a mistake literally every time you touch the ice, that's no excuse to, like, bring up, like, racial, like, there's no excuse to harass someone for any reason.
No.
So, like, that goes without saying. I'm talking about why the coach is benching him for, like, Ethan Bear is a good player. I don't know why he didn't touch the ice in any of those overtimes. He had like 8 minutes of ice time in a triple overtime game. And look, Darnell Nurse is a good player. I'm not here to disparage Darnell Nurse. But at some point, I think a fresh Ethan Bear is better than Darnell Nurse 4 minutes into a shift.
Well, when Darnell Nurse goes like 62 minutes and Ethan Bear doesn't even do half that, you need to put Ethan Bear in.
Ethan Bear played, I think it was 9 minutes and 30 seconds around that, and you said Darnell Nurse played 62 minutes. I don't know what is wrong with the Oilers. Everyone liked to joke about how Chiarelli absolutely dismantled them, and yeah, he did. But this current coach and GM are also just absolutely useless. Like, I'm sorry, but that is unforgivable as a coach, to just refuse to play your fourth line and third defensive pairing when you're playing back-to-back games, both of which will going to multiple overtimes. Like, if you play a double overtime game and then the next day play a triple overtime game, and you just don't play, like 15% of your team just don't play.
Yeah.
Like, in my mind, that's bad coaching. That's bad coaching, and also it's bad roster management if the coach feels the need to have to bench those types of players. Like, once again, I think Ethan Bear and Slater Cuckoo are good defensemen, and so I have that on the coach, not on the GM. It's not like if it's like Jack Johnson, I understand why you wouldn't want him touching the ice, but like, those are good, they're competent defensemen. Yeah. They make one mistake in the third period and you don't play them for 3 periods. And then also the comments after they get eliminated of, you can't go all in every year, you have to pick and choose. Like, I'm sorry, you have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl on your fucking team. What do you mean you don't go all in? You go all in every single year that you have Connor McDavid on your team.
Also, to hear a team say we're not going all in is just disappointing, because, like, why the hell would you not go all in?
Yeah, imagine being a fan of a team that has the best player in the world, and your team and your management are saying, we don't have to go all in this year.
Yeah, like, we're not too worried about going all in and winning the cup. We're just gonna, you're right, it's awful.
As a Penguins fan, sure, am I pissed off about some of the moves we made when we were trying to go all in every year? Absolutely. I'm not mad about the fact that we made moves. I'm mad about the fact that we made the wrong moves. There's a difference there. I would be more mad if we didn't make moves. Obviously, if you get the move wrong, you have every right to criticize the moves that were being made, but at least an attempt was made. Like, when I look at the Oilers, I don't even see an attempt being made. Like, say all what you will about the Buffalo Sabres, but at least they tried. Everything they did miserably blew up in their face.
They went to get Hall. They went to get whoever for Eichel, to help Eichel out.
Exactly. They made trades. They got fleeced in all of them, and they did not work out, but they made trades. They made free agent signings. On paper, the Taylor Hall signing made a whole lot of sense. Who thought that Taylor Hall would forget how to shoot the puck and then remember it the second you go to Boston? But that's a whole other story. When I look at the Oilers, I look at a team that just doesn't give a shit. I'm looking at a team that's like, okay, well, every year we'll make the playoffs because we have McDavid and Draisaitl, even though they didn't make the playoffs for a couple of those years, but that's besides the point. But they're
Yeah.
like, those two will carry us pretty far. And it's like, well, don't you think if you gave them a good team to surround them with, they'd take it even further?
Like, look at what the Leafs did. Look what Dubas went out to do. He got some grit. He got a goaltender, or I guess he got a goaltender years ago, a few years ago. He got some older veterans. He got Nick Foligno. He went out and did shit because he knew his team needed to be addressed.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand the whole, okay, if you go all in all the time, then you're left with no draft picks and no prospects. But once again, and I say this time and time again, go to a Chicago Blackhawks fan and ask them how they feel about this year. And they'll say, I know we kind of suck, but hey, we have those 3 rings, so it's worth it. Talk to a Los Angeles Kings fan.
It's so weird. I was talking to a friend. He's a school friend, and he's a Blackhawks fan. He says, "Yeah, I'm not expecting much. So these next few years are actually going to be fun, and it's kind of cool to see them have some talent."
Yeah, talk to me in 5 years after Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang retire, and we're probably a bottom 5 team in the league at some point in the future because we sacrificed our future. I'm aware of that now. I, as a Penguins fan, want us to sacrifice the future because the present is Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. And when we suck, however many years from now, when we do end up sucking, I will look at that and be like, totally worth the trade-off because we got 3 Stanley Cup rings. And sure, doesn't always work out. Ask a San Jose Sharks fan. Winning the Stanley Cup is hard. You can go all in and not do it. But
yep, it's possible.
But the worst part is being stuck in this limbo. And not to once again insult the Minnesota Wild because they played a lot more exciting hockey this year, but they still lost in the first round of the playoffs. Again.
They did, but they took Vegas to 7, which I don't think a lot of teams Minnesota could have done.
It's not a fair comparison because I think Minnesota are actually taking steps forward, and I think that next year they will be a big threat in the playoffs. Another year of development from a lot of their younger players, Kirill Kaprizov, they'll be back next year, and I think that they are on an upwards trajectory. But I look at the Oilers, and it's it just looks like they're content with just getting eliminated from the playoffs.
Yeah, they just look like we got to the playoffs. I have a job for another year, and we lost in the playoffs. What to do?
Because the Leafs on paper are a Stanley Cup contending team. Whether they do it or not on the ice is a different story. But the efforts are being made by management, right?
Yeah, and you can't really blame Dubas for what's going on here because he's done everything in his power.
We talk about this Game 7, not to bring it back to that, but it will be up to the players on the ice.
Yep. He's given them the talent. He's got everything he needed to do to make a Stanley Cup contending team. It's up to them.
The Oilers on paper, to me, look like a borderline playoff team, even though they have 2 of the top 5 players in the world right now. And that's not on the players. That's on the management. And honestly, once again, I not to keep shitting on the Sabres, but this is actually going to defend them. I think the Oilers are the biggest joke franchise in the NHL. I think they're more of a joke than Buffalo. I really do. I really do.
But no one's going to talk about that because Buffalo went on an 18-game losing skid.
Yeah, but they don't have the talent that if you give me Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, I guarantee you this year in the North Division, if you give me Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, I guarantee you I won't do worse. I won't do worse. I don't think you would do worse either. All you have to do is if you make the playoffs, you have matched what the actual real life team did. You win 1 playoff game, you've already done a better job. That cannot be the bar in Edmonton. That cannot be the bar.
Well, it seems that they've just accepted that. It just seems like they don't really care.
And that's the saddest thing, because at least when I talk to Leafs fans, and not just Leafs fans, when you talk to Leafs management, the front office, if look at everything that Dubas, look at everything that Shanahan, look at everything that Sheldon Keefe have been saying over the last 2 years, they recognize that this isn't good enough. They recognize that they are not meeting the expectations. They recognize that they need to do more. And then the Oilers say, "Oh, you can't go in all in. You can't go all in every year." What? What? How? How is the general manager of the Edmonton Oilers, as the head coach of the Edmonton Oilers, you don't sit down, look into the camera, and say, "I am sorry, Oilers fans. We have the best player in the world, and we couldn't win a playoff game. That's on me. We fucked up. We need to do better." How do you not say that?
It's as a fan, it's really really disappointing to hear that.
Like, if I was an Oilers fan, like, how do you have trust in your management? How do you have trust in your management that they're going to do something, that they're going to make this team better?
You legit can't. Like at this point, you just can't. It's just so disappointing.
And like, once again, no disrespect to the Winnipeg Jets, because they played well. And I mean, also no
Well,
disrespect to the Oilers, because like every single game went to overtime. Like I think
three of the
sorry,
four.
3 of the 4 went to overtime, and game 1 was a 1-goal game that then had 2 empty netters at the end of it. So it was a 1-goal
Did
game.
pull it. They did pull a Toronto though, and did have a 4-1 lead.
Yes, that's like, I understand, like, you can make the whole, oh well, like, what are the odds of losing 4 straight 1-goal games, 3 of them in overtime? Like you said, you had a 4-1 lead in one of the games.
Yep.
Your coach refused to play 10% of your lineup for 2 of the games. It's hockey. This isn't basketball where if you have LeBron James, your team makes the finals because a player can do so much. This isn't football where the quarterback touches the ball 50 times a game and can make a difference. Unfortunately, in hockey, your best player really can't do too much. Now, like, if you think about it, really can't do too much. It's so hard for one player to single-handedly carry a team. It really is. You need support. And the Oilers, and the saddest thing is not that the Oilers haven't given McDavid support, because there are plenty of superstars that haven't been given support. It's the fact that it doesn't look like the Oilers are trying to do that.
Yeah, it seems like they don't give a shit.
Yep. Anyways, any final thoughts for this week's episode?
Monday is going to be a make or break for me, and I'm really, really concerned about it.
Yeah. So a big good luck to all the Leafs and Habs fans out there for Game 7, and then also a good luck to any fans whose team has made the second round. Unless you're an Islanders fan, then fuck you. No, I'm joking. But yeah, we'll be back next week to dissect the Game 7 and what's going on in the second round of the playoffs. But until then, this has been another episode of the Benchwarmers Sports Talk podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you're listening on YouTube and you enjoyed this episode, leave a like. That's much appreciated. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to your podcasts, share with your friends or leave a review, because that helps us out a lot, and we appreciate any and all support that you guys give us. But until then, we'll see you next week.